Eating Michelin-starred food in the comfort of your own home. Tasting an exciting new cuisine every day of the week, just by clicking an app. It wasn't always like that. Dining out was once a novelty, only for the wealthy. It wasn't long before that notion would be completely challenged.
This was really their first interaction with technology. This is like the iPhone of 1902.
Never before had this process of choosing food presented to the dining public.
Since then, technology and societal changes have brought a wave of affordable dining options.
Sure, if we're going to talk about numbers, delivery is already more than a $100 billion industry.
And now, the restaurant industry is going through yet another evolution. From brick and mortar into the cloud.
The global restaurant industry is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. There's absolutely enough room for, many, many different concepts.
So we have to re-engineer what our cooks do in the kitchen. A traditional restaurant may take 8, 10, 15 minutes to prepare. Ours right now is between 3 and 5 minutes.
So when and how did we start eating from a little box?
This was revolutionary. They were made of glass, marble, and they were magnificent.
I didn't think I could use data analytics for food.
We've got big goals. How do we build a brand that doesn't exist on the street, that doesn't exist in the bricks and mortar space?
Being in a restaurant on Zoom? I'm not sure.
Well, it will be like advanced technology things, like robots cooking food for you.
Pixel food. Or like a virtual restaurant, like a restaurant. Like the food you see in games. Like Super Mario, there's a banana, right? I think. Yeah. Then you'll see a banana named after Super Mario.
If you said virtual restaurant to me, it'd be like those guys that only set up in dark kitchens to serve delivery orders specifically.
Virtual restaurant. To me, it sounds like I'm going to look at a computer screen and not get anything into my stomach.
So this is one of our cloud kitchens, which is kitchen number 9. So as you can see, it's a little tighter than most restaurants are. This is about 12 square meters, so about 140 square feet.
Sean Smithson is the co-founder of TiffinLabs and resident kitchen choreographer.
And we've designed this efficiently so you can capture the steps of service perfectly. So when our chefs are in here working, they know exactly where they go from space to space and from piece of equipment to piece of equipment. How do we build a brand that doesn't exist on the street, that doesn't exist in the bricks and mortar space?
But why were they even thinking about building a restaurant without a physical space? Michael Schaefer is an expert on the latest food trends.
There's a lot of overhead in a traditional restaurant that you might not have in a kitchen that's just producing for delivery.
The COVID-19 pandemic hit. Restaurant spaces became empty shells with no foot traffic and wasted rental costs. Real estate that was once an asset was now a liability. So the TiffinLabs team decided to strip out the unnecessary costs and focus on where the money was at.
Sure. I mean, if we're going to talk about numbers, delivery is already more than a $100 billion industry. We expect it to nearly double by 2024. Looking at Asia overall, which of course is going to be dominated by China, and that's going to be one of the fastest growing regions in the world.
The way people live and work is different. In the US, many times people leave work at 5:30 and go home and they drive a lot. Here it's really built around the density of the cities. It's built around working from 9 to 7, 9 to 8. Your time is that commodity.
In Southeast Asia, Indonesia takes the biggest slice of the food delivery pie, with Singapore coming in strong in second place. Why? Because 80% of Singaporeans own a smartphone. And with a changing society, less people are cooking at home and more are turning to fast and fuss-free food delivery services. And in 2020, Singapore was TiffinLabs' first test market for their business.
Singapore is actually a very, very good microcosm for us. It was a template for the rest of the world, right? It was a high-density city with high-knowledge workers, disposable income, high cost, high labor, high food cost. How do we make sure the economics work? How do we grow in places that are already ripe for disruption and really make a difference in those markets where we feel like we can adapt and grow faster?
But who is the online customer? Teenagers, university students, young working professionals. But now, ordering food online has become a habit for every age. And since COVID-19's lockdown, everyone has joined the online bandwagon.
People ordering more in because it's easy.
Lawrence Kohler uses behavioral economics and psychology to help brands and companies create business opportunities.
Digital is completely adapted by everyone, even by the seniors in every country. It's easy to do. Of course, a big trend to convenience. It's much easier these days to really order food in and have a huge variety at your fingertip.
But delivery is not, well, revolutionary. The legend goes Queen Margarita, tired of eating fancy food, ordered a meal fit for a commoner to be delivered right to her royal quarters. Mahadeo Havichi started a lunch delivery service in Mumbai, the Dabbawalas, the 125-year-old network that still feeds Mumbai today. Industrialization and the technology revolution led to Domino's Pizza, delivering takeaway to you. And then came the app revolution.
Since the dawn of humankind, human beings have tried to increase the profitability of the food source by reducing the amount of energy and time invested in obtaining it.
Adam Wenzel is a food psychologist, researching why we eat the food we eat.
So for example, if you have to drive 30 minutes to pick up a pizza, it's actually less profitable in terms of the energy it yields and the time invested versus having the exact same pizza delivered. So in a way, things like vending machines and instant foods, and certainly delivery pizzas, are the epitome of optimal foraging.
Optimal foraging today means grab and go. And the latest foraging trend for the multi-trillion-dollar restaurant industry is fast casual chains. And that is exactly what the co-founder of TiffinLabs, Nat, picked up at his last role.
I was part of the team that together launched the food business in Thailand. My job at Grab, I saw the impact of food delivery on consumers, merchants in the traditional F&B space, and saw very clearly what the gaps were.
The gap they identified was not an offshoot of a traditional restaurant. Instead, they toyed with a completely new concept, the virtual restaurant.
We spent almost a year studying the whole space to understand what worked, what didn't work. We really thought we came up with something revolutionary.
What exactly is a virtual restaurant? Also known as dark, ghost, or cloud kitchen. The virtual restaurant has no storefronts and no dine-in facilities. The only way you can order their food is through the internet, leading to its name, a kitchen in the clouds. And TiffinLabs had plans to create the biggest network of cloud kitchens in the world. Nearly a century ago, dining out in the late 1800s looked a little different. It was all about the long, leisurely lunch and fine dining. But all that was just about to change.
A food truck? It's not like the massaging chair. It's the Automat. Octopus, fish food, seafood.
You just sit down, you put it in, beep, 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 and it maybe just boop, pops up. And that's your food. And it's like no interaction with anyone.
Well, when I was living in Sweden and younger, then Automat was you put in a coin and you opened up and there was a piece of chocolate or something else.
Jan has spent several years researching our dining habits across the decades.
I'm not approaching restaurants as a fan. I'm not approaching it nostalgically. It's a way to examine it and ask yourself, how did we get where we are today? All the social problems in the country, that you can find them reflected in restaurant history. Industrialization sort of spread of white-collar jobs also in cities, office jobs. That's part of the growth of modern capitalism. So people moved from rural areas into the city.
What starts to happen during the early 20th century, as more and more people are working in factories, more women are joining the workforce itself was becoming more diverse.
David Freeland is the author of Automats, Taxi Dances, and Vaudeville, a book about New York's social and cultural history.
People didn't have time for these long meals during the middle of the day. So we start to see the beginnings of what we would now call fast food.
Women really scrutinized restaurants. They were more conscious of hygiene and sanitation, and they really demanded cleaner, nicer, and more pleasant spaces to eat in.
This would be the cultural setting that would spark the Automat craze in America. The Automat was created in Germany in 1895. Like the modern vending machine, it was an automatic fast food restaurant serving food and drinks without the need for any human interaction.
And then you also had this distrust of waiters. They really liked the idea of serving themselves and not having to deal with waiting staff.
Lisa Hurwitz has spent the last 10 years researching the machine that would take the country by storm.
The story of Joseph Horn and Frank Hardart happened a long time ago. The story goes that a traveling salesman approached the team with this concept of an automatic restaurant.
An automatic restaurant that was all the rage in Germany.
My great-grandfather traveled to Europe to check it out.
Frank Hardart was born in Germany, but hadn't been back since he immigrated to New Orleans, Louisiana. And the first time he laid eyes on the Automat in action, it was love at first sight. Rosemary Wiley knows all this because she's Frank Hardart's great-granddaughter.
They brought the Automat on a ship, and the first one they bought sank. So they got another one. Took another year for it to be built and shipped.
In 1902, the Automat, the shiny modern machine, was exactly what the working folks of America were looking for. Waiterless, fast, and efficient. It was the beginning of our love affair with quick and fast food. Started in 2020, Singapore's TiffinLabs virtual restaurant is making global headlines, ditching Dine-In for delivery.
I absolutely think virtual restaurants as a concept have disrupted the food and beverage industry. Already we're seeing packaged foods companies thinking about ways that they can get into prepared meals via delivery. That is the source of so much interest and concern, from some of the largest food and drink companies in the world. I think that alone, shows that this is very much a disruptive trend that will go on disrupting for some time.
But how did TiffinLabs take this delivery trend and turn it into an innovation? They redesigned the traditional kitchen, and it began with this. In the average restaurant kitchen, approximately 1,000 square meters in size, you have a station for cleaning and washing, storage, food preparation, a cooking and a service station. A trusted system designed in the 1800s that had no reason to change, up until TiffinLabs came along.
So this is one of our cloud kitchens, which is kitchen number 9. So as you can see, it's a little tighter than most restaurants are. This is about 12 square meters, so about 140 square feet. And we've designed this efficiently so you can capture the steps of surface perfectly. So when our chefs are in here working, they know exactly where they go from space to space and from piece of equipment to piece of equipment.
Tearing up the traditional kitchen was only the start. While traditional restaurants strive to hone in their brand and stand out in their chosen cuisine, TiffinLabs needed to be able to cook, well, Thai, Italian, Chinese, Korean, Indian, Singaporean, and each cuisine comes under its very own brand.
I think the big change is the ability to experiment across multiple brands. Multiple cuisines can be very important for scale. If you're trying to become the largest player, you can make bets that you otherwise wouldn't make.
Multi-branding is nothing new. We've seen it in many, many markets, whether it's the car industry, the retail, the fashion industry.
Sometimes I jokingly ask my wife, what kind of chicken are we getting today? Tonight we are having squid.
I think I eat regularly quite a few different cuisines, possibly 4 or 5. I like it varied.
We like Japanese, Italian, not so much Indian. The other day we went for Korean, but it was okay, not too excited. But I like Western. And of course Chinese. We eat Chinese all the time.
We enjoy a variety of foods. And in fact, the more variety is present, the more we tend to eat. This is one of the reasons that a lot of candies, even candies that taste the same like M&Ms, come in a variety of colors, because that variety actually promotes consumption.
It helps you to generate economies of scale. Helps you on the supply, especially on the food business where it's less waste.
It sounds wonderful in theory, but cooking 6 dishes each from a different cuisine in a 12 square meter kitchen with 2 chefs can't be easy.
It became a dance and an orchestration. The biggest challenge was spatially defining how each one of the brands worked within the kitchen, and then how to make sure that they were coordinated so that you didn't have people walking all over each other.
Terrence Chua's job is to take everything chefs know about cooking and turn it into a process fit for a delivery-only kitchen.
So in a traditional restaurant, the food gets to the customer within 7 to 8 minutes from the kitchen to the customer. In a virtual kitchen, the food travels at least 45 minutes from the kitchen to the customer.
We have to re-engineer what our cooks do in the kitchen. For a virtual kitchen, you're focused solely on getting the best quality food in the quickest time frame to get the best experience.
So how crucial is time in this tiny, packed kitchen?
So if you fry chicken for 3 minutes, by the time it reaches the customer, it would have been perfect because of the carryover cooking within that 45-minute time gap. But if you were to fry it over like 6 minutes, it is really crispy. The crust is really crispy, but the protein inside the chicken could be really dry because the heat squeezes out the proteins and the moisture oozes out.
Time is of the essence in a delivery-only business, and packaging is key.
I think it's probably the 50-50. It's a very good marriage between the packaging and the product. We were starting to build our Potato Lab brand, which is a snack brand that has French fries. We brought about 50 orders of fries back. We put all this packaging out. We have probably 80 pieces of packaging, and we started sorting. But when it got into 30 and 45 minutes, the packaging really started to erode the product. And what we finally came down to was the best product we had was the one that we're trying. But even then, we continue to see it as multifaceted, right? It has to deliver the food high quality, and it has to be tasty, and it has to be a good experience.
Variety, time, packaging. TiffinLabs' motto. Not so different from another fast food phenomenon from the past. In 1902, the Automat, in all its gleaming glory, had just been unleashed on the American population.
They were extremely large, taller than us, very wide, and they were made of glass and marble. They were magnificent. You might not even speak English yet, but you can go to the Automat. This was really their first interaction with technology. This is like the iPhone of 1902. You're really using technology by using an Automat.
Chicken pot pie for $1.15. Halibut steak for $1.50. Delicious food at affordable prices. Culturally, the Automat was groundbreaking.
And never before had this process of choosing food been presented to the dining public. It was just a giant machine full of all sorts of opportunity. The Horn & Hardart Automat's marketed choice. We see that now today where everything is about options and personalized. Starbucks.
So you see that in any developed country where we call it self-actualization psychologically, where people really want to express their individuality. And that leads to customization and personalization. So you don't want to order or buy something that everyone else has. You want to have something specific.
The other part of it is control. When we get to personalize food, we get to take control, right? And control of our own destiny.
By 1920, the economic model that fueled the Automat's success was threatened by the Great Depression.
October 29, 1929, Black Tuesday. The New York Stock Exchange is in a panic.
America was giving up a traditional economy for a free market, and industrial workers began losing their jobs. Spending power plummeted, and people couldn't afford their favorite meal anywhere, let alone at the Automat. But Horn and Hardart turned this crisis into an opportunity through one commodity.
A lot of people talk about the coffee. My father once met President Nixon, who told him, he said, Hardart, is that where those wonderful baked beans come from? And coffee was always another favorite. And the way it was dispensed was so beautiful and interesting from these dolphin spouts.
Before this, people were making coffee, clarifying it with eggshells, but that was not the way of the future. So they were so known for their fabulous cup of drip coffee. They were agreed upon as one of the best cups of coffee in the city, and it was so delicious. This was about to become something widely popular in Philadelphia and New York City, and they saw it first.
Horn and Hardart practically invented America's coffee culture before Starbucks.
Thank you all very much. Employees at Starbucks raised their coffee cups to toast its newest brew. The coffee giant is launching what it says is an everyday cup of joe.
Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks, talked about how one of his inspirations for Starbucks was his experience as a child going to the Automat. When he stepped foot in that Automat was when he decided to be an entrepreneur, and it just never left him. Cafe culture was really a new thing to New York. Americans have never been thought of as people to take their time with eating. Americans are always on the go, always in a rush. And so this was really a new thing to sit and take your time.
The Automat was able to adapt as an institution to other changes that were taking place within American life.
And in 1945, America won the war. Men returned to work, women went back home, and the microwave hit almost every house in the country.
And here's the real breakthrough. The oven uses radio waves at the frequencies used in radar. This reheats the meal in an incredibly short time. A complete meal in around 45 seconds.
When America changed, so did the Automat.
They wanted to create a restaurant that would really appeal to the masses, and at that time, the masses meant women. One of Horn and Hardart's strategies to keep their skin in the game was to incorporate their food into your meal at home. Less work for mother was a slogan that represented, Mom, take some work off of your shoulders. Let us make your job of being a mother easier.
They had retail shops that would have food prepared that you could pick up a prepared meal.
And the idea was you just, microwaved it or put it in the oven.
By default, another great market for the Automat were the very people mothers endeavored to feed to their fullest.
I've heard a lot of stories of kids talking about the ice cream or the hot apple pie with the vanilla cream sauce on top.
Chocolate chip cookies were one of our favorites. We got to bring them home in boxes. And macaroni and cheese. I just feel like it's a creamy comfort food, creamy, cheesy, warm.
The love for it was passed on between generations. And then I talked to people as well who never actually got to eat in an Automat, but they heard stories that were passed down throughout their family.
The term comfort foods was actually coined in the 1960s for foods associated with the security of childhood. And when you think about it, a lot of the comfort foods we enjoy as adults were foods we enjoyed as children.
The Automat won people over in the mid-1940s during the war years, with marketing campaigns like less work for mothers and wartime comfort food like mashed potatoes and baked beans. But post-war America craved more than utility. The people wanted quality.
And it also shows how glamour fits in with the dinner table. Every dish guaranteed to stimulate a jaded appetite. The way to the heart of the most stubborn bachelor is through his Tumtum.
The original Automats that came from Europe, those relied on a dumbwaiter system. You would order your food, and then there would be a kitchen downstairs where they would make the food for you, and then they would bring it up to you on a dumbwaiter pulley kind of system, like an elevator operated from the basement.
Unfortunately for Horn and Hardart, the Automat's machinery was slow and inefficient.
Come on, Mushy. Hey, let's go, Soggy.
And complaints about the Automat's food quality began flooding in.
The food was pre-made, it was ready to go. For a long time, it was fresh. That became a problem in its later years when you didn't have enough foot traffic. You had the food sitting there for too long of a time, and then the quality started to decline at that point.
Horn and Hardart had one option. They completely revamped their vending mechanisms. They went from a dumbwaiter system that brought food up from where it was prepped to a rotary system with pockets that held food.
So there were different pockets for hot and cold food. So if you can imagine a pivot, and around the sides of it were these insulated compartments.
The design of the hot pockets meant that pies could stay warm and ice cream could stay cold.
From the outside, all the customer would see would be a glass window, and inside of the window would be an order of macaroni and cheese or turnips or chicken or pie. And once the customer put nickels in the slot next to the window would spring open. The customer would reach in and take out the order of whatever it is they wanted.
Food was dispensed super quickly and at the right temperature. But Horn and Hardart had one more challenge: consistency.
They eliminated those basement kitchens, and they actually began preparing the food off-site in commissaries.
I got to go as a child with my dad and my sister to where they made the food. It was sort of a gigantic kitchen or a food factory. And then the conveyor belts would take the pies when they came through the oven, and different employees would do different steps of the cooking process. It was like an assembly line, like a scientific, clean place where this wonderful food was coming out.
They were preparing so much food all at the same time in one place and then sending it out to many different places. This was revolutionary.
Tasting and testing food was a part of the Horn and Hardart quality control in the commissaries.
This was a daily ritual of the company where the executives would sit around a table, they'd invite a few guests, and they would taste the food that was from the commissary to make sure that it tasted right. And once they approved it, then it could be sent out all over the rest of the city.
It was the mid-1950s, and Horn and Hardart was staying afloat, a stickler for quality and constant innovation.
Yeah, I think it's very challenging to last for so long, like 100 years. We see only few companies can really weather the storms, like a GE or an IBM and so forth. It takes a lot of resilience because there's so many challenges for a company along the way, and it takes a willingness to change.
Decades later, enter the cloud kitchen. And while it's relatively new, the business model is facing similar challenges. And its effects are tenfold because TiffinLabs is a cloud kitchen with no physical store.
The customer is really focused on convenience, but they also want quality. At the end of the day, they want a meal that surprise and delight. And if it's not there for someone who doesn't have a touch point where I can directly touch them, it can be an easy walk away for that customer.
TiffinLabs needs to maintain quality, consistency, and novelty in order to retain customers who have a huge range of options to choose from. And all with competition nipping at their heels.
I think part of the issue is that the barriers to entry are still relatively low. As the barriers come down, competition goes up, and it becomes even more challenging to stand out.
In Asia alone, first movers, Rebel Foods, are grabbing a massive-sized market in India. China's Panda Selected are carving out a piece of the largest market in the world. And in Singapore, there are multiple brands offering delivery food in a click at any given time.
I would say it's almost becoming like fashion. No one sews their own clothes anymore, but we talk about clothes and we think about clothes and we show off what we're wearing and we look for new ideas more than we ever have before. And I think a similar process is underway with food. And there's much more willingness to try new things than in the past.
Let's bring our editorial microscope into focus on a very significant phenomenon.
In any food business, the basic economics run on a tight balance. Supply of food has to match demand. That's where data analytics becomes useful.
I think any kind of analytics on what people are eating and what preferences are in real time is going to be a game changer.
So on the demand front, as soon as you have data, you can cater to the needs of those people. You know what they want, and when and how and whatever they want to eat. So that is great to maximize your marketing efforts.
I love data analytics because it's a way of making sense of the world around us.
Tiara is TiffinLabs' data analytics expert.
When I first started, analytics was in very traditional industry. I didn't think I could use data analytics for food.
Some of the most interesting insights from TiffinLabs banks on data analysis.
Salads is very popular in Singapore, especially in the CBD area. We saw that the biggest demand for fried chicken was in the Upper Bukit Timah area and the Tampines area. Fried chicken is something that they typically order on weekends when they want to treat themselves. Salad was really a weekday meal for lunch. So we noticed that on weekdays, females were doing more of the ordering. But then you flip it around on the weekends, the guys are doing the ordering, and they were also spending more.
That's extremely valuable data. And knowing, all of the things you can get from a smartphone, time of day, location, once you aggregate that, it can give you some very powerful insights.
We realized that people were really looking for comfort food, and the ultimate comfort food to them was fried chicken. We have both Western and Asian cuisines. So this was really how we came up with one of our brands, Fat Fingers, which is the Korean fusion brands. So taking the normal Korean fried chicken, but giving this Westernized twist to it so that it can cater to both pockets of the demographics.
Once the data reveals what the nation is craving, resident TiffinLabs research and development chef Terrence Chua gets cracking.
I would never have thought in my career to use data to create cuisines or concepts. The marketing passed me a concept of doing American Korean fried chicken. So I took that concept and sourced out different kinds of ingredients that would fit that concept. And with that, I created a menu. We do so much R&D to ensure that by the time the food reaches the customer, it is 100% there.
Data analytics is disrupting the way TiffinLabs does business.
Only a few months ago that it kind of sparked that virtual restaurants could work, because I started my career in brick and mortar restaurants. Data is a game changer for the R&D chefs because it streamlines and focuses our concept.
When I was younger, I don't think a concept such as a virtual brand is possible. We're just so used to going to the store to getting our food and dining out with a family. But I think as we move now more to a more digital world, the way that we consume food and look for food is completely different. And this is really where a virtual brand makes a lot of sense.
'60s America, the era of great inflation. The cost of everything was increasing.
They needed to raise the cup of coffee from a nickel to 10 cents, which is something that they avoided doing for so many years. But at a certain point, it became unavoidable. It wasn't just about the price increasing, but it was about the times changing. It was sort of about the world changing, and the Automat represented the old world and a much simpler time.
By this time, fast food burger chains had taken over the city.
The Automats were fast. McDonald's was faster. The whole fast food culture of McDonald's and Burger King militates against that kind of languorous expenditure of time spent within the space itself.
The Automat technology by the 1960s, it wasn't anymore the revolutionary turn of the century kind of experience that it once was. It was becoming old-fashioned.
As America expanded into the suburbs, fast food chains quickly followed suit.
People were drawn to McDonald's, Burger King, certainly because of marketing.
And now Burger King introduces the bacon.
Those corporations marketed on a national level. The Automats never did that because they never expanded nationally.
Aren't you hungry for Burger King now?
Aren't you hungry for the new bacon double cheeseburger now?
This was terrible for their business. They were depending on the foot traffic, and they had high rents to pay. And they had many, many locations. And also, people's tastes were changing, the types of food that they wanted to eat. People wanted fast food that was really basic.
Fast food chains also had one more advantage over Horn and Hardart. When the automobile industry exploded, McDonald's and Burger King were the first to offer drive-through lanes.
Burger King?
Yeah, this is Burger King.
Would you deliver a chef's salad?
For you? Absolutely.
Part of why there still isn't a Horn and Hardart today is that they didn't do a good job of forecasting what was ahead and staying ahead. I think they took their success for granted.
Horn and Hardart had failed to innovate. Industrialization had caused a shift in the food industry. Just like how Henry Ford revolutionized car production with the assembly line, the McDonald brothers created the Speedy system, where experienced cooks were replaced by many unskilled workers who did one small, specific step in the food preparation process. Wages remained low, keeping food costs down, and Americans lapped up the fast food chains. Soon, money laundering scandals began to taint the Automat's reputation.
It was no longer a family business. It really no longer was the restaurant that it was a company with very high morals.
The whole chain collapsed. Suddenly one day they're gone. The restaurant business has always been a very risky business. It has had a very high failure rate, always.
So many different things caught up with them. But it was a pretty long run that they had. It was amazing when you think of it, and how these, restaurants are a competitive business.
80 years after they opened, Horn and Hardart declared bankruptcy. But it wasn't all over for the company that invented the Automat in America. They had one ace left up their sleeve.
They were trying to leverage their real estate. They were in really dire straits, and they didn't have much of a choice. It wasn't so much of a secret weapon as it was a final attempt.
Land once occupied by the Automat had a value of $7.5 million in 1973.
They did franchises with some newer restaurants, Burger King, for example. They bought shares in Burger King stock. Apparently, they considered buying the company of Burger King.
By 1991, almost a century after it opened, most Automat locations were leased out to Burger King.
I have been reading about the Automat for around 10 years now. I love the Automat for what it represents and always will represent, even though it's gone. It was a brilliant idea. It really was.
Singapore's virtual restaurant TiffinLabs is making waves for disrupting the food delivery industry.
We've been moving very fast. What we're doing is groundbreaking in a lot of ways.
For a company born out of a small country, TiffinLabs has big ambitions.
We're already focused on building a network of kitchens that is global in nature, that really takes into account everything from our supply chain to R&D to data analytics to operations to execution.
One of the biggest challenges for us in terms of building a global F&B brand is no two countries are the same. The taste palettes between Singapore, New York, and London are definitely different. Even though we have a menu and recipe built out, there is always a degree of localization to meet the needs of the local taste palettes.
Although the recipes are slightly tweaked, imagine the idea of ordering your favorite chicken rice made in Singapore, but while overseas.
Yeah, because it's my favorite, and like for 4 years, I don't think I can take it.
For sure, I would order the chicken rice if I was stuck in France, maybe once a month.
I love my laksa, kway teow, chicken rice. I would crave and I'd order it, yeah.
Yeah. Are you joking? Of course. Finding chicken rice when you're in like North America is like, oh my God, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yes, if the prices were similar to Singapore. Otherwise, I would order pepper crab or chili crab.
Not only is TiffinLabs exporting Singapore's local delicacies, but just like the Automat, TiffinLabs is also using real estate to get a leg up over competitors.
We're partnering with real estate aggregators around the world with underutilized kitchen space. So I'm not sure real estate is our secret weapon, but it's an avenue for us to expand and grow.
Instead of building new kitchens, TiffinLabs is renting existing kitchens in restaurants and catering firms, giving them access to thousands of kitchens by 2025, gaining them a foothold in over 30 countries, from San Francisco to Sydney. That's how they've scaled faster than any cloud kitchen and are planning to stay ahead of the competition. With TiffinLabs poised to disrupt the restaurant industry not just locally, but globally as well, will this spell the end of the traditional restaurant?
We're going to see a lot of innovation there. And so I would say, if anything, this is going to drive better experiences in the restaurant, because we may be asking restaurants to do fewer things, fewer occasions. We're not all going to shut ourselves up in our homes. We're just going to have more options.
Humans are social creatures. We love being around other people. We also have to eat. It's one of those things we have to do every day, multiple times per day. And so we've kind of evolved over time to be like, listen, we have to do this chore. You want to do it together, right? You have to eat, I have to eat. How about we get together and eat? It's part of our society. It's part of being human, getting together and eating.
Dining out has gone from restaurants reserved for just the wealthy to the fuss-free convenience of the Automat. Today, delivery-only cloud kitchens are setting a radical overhaul to the restaurant industry. But whatever gastronomical trend disruptions, one thing's for sure, you're probably not gonna have to wait very long for your order.